You hear me? Am I on?
Yep, we can hear you and we
Oh,
can
good.
see you.
The grandkids are outside, so it shouldn't be too chaotic.
Just
I'm,
waiting.
I'm, I'm on
You're
this
good
one.
to go.
Great, thank you. Hi, Luke. We can hear you. We can't see you, which is perfectly fine. I imagine you're someplace exotic.
No, it's not that exotic, but I have issues about my Teams thing, so that's I'll fix it for the next meeting. I can't get my video on for some reason. So
No worries. We can hear you loud and clear, so all is good. Okay, it's 10:02 and I will call this meeting to order. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further, give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. So everyone's had a chance to take a look at the agenda. Are there any changes to be made to the agenda? Any additions? I'm not seeing any, so can I have a motion to approve the agenda as it stands? Thank you, Sue. And all in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Feel free to declare pecuniary interest now or at any time during the meeting as you see fit. And then moving on to item number 5, approval of the previous meeting minutes of September 17th. And the recommendation is that those minutes of the Climate Action Committee be approved. Do I have someone to make that motion to put that on the table? Thank you, Anne. And any discussion on those minutes? I did not attend that meeting, so I don't have anything here to contribute, but perhaps others do. Any questions or concerns about those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes? Thank you, and that carries. I see that there's no delegations or correspondence that I'm aware of. Carly, jump in here anytime if I'm incorrect. And moving on to staff reports. So Steve, I'll turn this over to you for an operational update.
Thank you, Chair Coburn. Through you to the committee, I'm going to pass the floor over to Trevor here. He's going to give you guys an update on items 8.1 to or 8.1.1 to 8.13 there, just to give you an update of what's going on there, and then we'll go into the work plan that I submitted to you guys for review and all that. But I figure we can bring that down to new business internal work plan there, because there's going to be some comments going back and forth between some items that are on the agenda as well. So I kind of want to move some stuff around there, but then I'm going to turn the floor to Trevor first.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
Good morning, Chairperson and members. So 8.11, that was the meeting with the county and the lower tier municipalities in regard to the draft county climate action plan. So the community practice, it was stated it is, oh, there's Danuta, an emitter. So it was, the county stated that the community practice is a technical best practice sharing platform. There's no way for setting direction of the county or vice versa. So it's not for the county to set direction for the municipality, the lower tiers. There were some questions from the CAOs. So it was mostly attended by a senior management team as to how the municipalities fit within the county plan and what the county was going to provide in terms of resources, either financial or technical. Also some questions as to how the county would go about aligning with the lower tier plans if a municipality was to develop one. And That's what I have for notes there. If there's any questions, I'm more than able to answer them.
Thank you, Trevor, for that update. Any questions from committee members? Go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, I guess my question was that Trevor, most of what you posed there were questions like how will the county support and that kind of stuff. Did they answer any of those questions in the meeting, or was it just a preliminary meeting to pose questions?
So through the chairperson to the member, so it was essentially Linda introducing herself to the other municipalities and just, yeah, like you said, getting some feedback, some preliminary feedback, and seeing how they would best serve the other municipalities and what the level of interest was. So amongst the lower tier, obviously you can imagine a lot of the lower tier municipalities have they're in different places on this subject, and they have varying levels of interest, and it's not clear what municipalities will continue on during the community practice. So like all committees, I'm sure that there'll be varying levels of interest throughout, but it was just them collecting that feedback for that preliminary meeting.
Anne, do you have a follow-up question to that?
Just a quick follow-up. So did they then speak to the question of how will the county support the municipalities that are ready to move forward? Because I think that's one that's really pertinent for us.
And through the chairperson to the member, yeah, that was a big question posed by a lot of the lower tiers as to what kind of support would be available. And the county, I think, was taking that feedback, and then hopefully in the next meeting, if there is one, they will pose a reply.
Thank you. Okay, and did I see your hand up as well, Sue?
Yes, you did, but Luke's got his hand up as well. Just a quick question of Trevor, and this is really just curiosity on my part. Were all lower tier municipalities represented at that? Like, I know each is at different stages, but did they at least send representation so that maybe at some point we could all get on that same page with it somehow and support each other? I'm thinking of like the community safety and well-being plan, where we brought everybody from 2 counties together to create that, and significant cost savings by doing that. So it would be nice to see all the lower tier municipalities be able to work together. So just curious, were they all represented? Thank you.
So through the chairperson to the member, as I'm not a senior management team member, I can only kind of speculate, but when Al was, or the previous CAO was with the municipality, there was conversations that happened around this matter, and to get all the lower tier municipalities kind of on the same page. I think a problem there is continuity, and even amongst the other municipalities, you're going to see senior management team leaving or CAOs leaving. So that continuity kind of gets fractured, and I cannot speak from my position as to how to remedy that, but I can give you a kind of a, from the agenda, what members were there. So it was Georgian Bluffs, Grey Highlands, their CAO, Director of Transportation and Director of Buildings, Hanover, their CAO, Meaford, their CAO, Owen Sound, the Supervisor of Environmental Services, and I spoke to the gentleman yesterday, Southgate, their CAO, Blue Mountains Manager of Sustainability and Solid Waste, and Blue Mountains Sustainability Coordinator, West Grey, their CAO, and regrets for Chatworth, their CAO.
Thank you. So it sounds like it's mostly the CAOs of the municipalities who are attending that. So I wonder, maybe Steve can speak to that. If I may, before I go to Luke, when we say we hope that we can all get on the same page, that makes me a little nervous, because that means we're going to have to slow our progress to, and I know it's just terminology, right? But if we're a little bit ahead of all of the rest, I worry that our time spent at a forum like that may actually stall things for us instead of helping move us forward. And I don't know, Steve or Trevor, if you can respond to that. Steve.
Through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee here. Great question. We are going to continue moving forward. We're not going to stall our progress. We want to continue with our plan as a town lower tier. We want to keep going and not drop steam, right? So, you know, once this train starts going, we want to continue this process going, because once you start to slow down, it's a heck of a time trying to get back up to speed to move it forward. So we're going to continue moving forward with this process. We are going to attend these meetings just to kind of be more of an observer, provide us what we're kind of showing up on and continuing on. I know a lot of the senior management team does attend these meetings, and that's where they are right now, and they are trying to figure out the best approach of how to implement this kind of process through their organizations. But for us, we're going to continue on as status quo and keep going on our timelines, because we have set timelines in place so that we can get stuff done in the next 2 years, and that's our plan, right? So we don't want to slow down at any cost.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. I'm going to go to Luke next and then over to Sue after that.
Yeah, that maybe now realizing who was part of the meeting, and maybe not so much relevant anymore. But I'm just wondering, like, it follows on Anne's question. Like, when we discussed with HITBA several times, and then also during the last presentation from Linda, there has been a consistent offering by the county to provide the lower levels with information, and they keep saying they have a lot of information that we actually can use. So I'm just a little bit, I really hope that we can continue on that path, and that we don't, it feels a little bit like we're going back in terms of what the county can offer. The county has offered a lot in the past. So I'm just wondering, like, when do we get to the point by which we can capitalize on all the work they already have done, so that we can actually jumpstart our own efforts and you know, get the baselines done.
Thank you, Luke. That's a great question. And further to that, when we say sharing of information, let's just get specific. We want to have access to what they've gathered in terms of emissions inventories that are relevant to our municipality. So, Steve, I wonder if you could address that question from Luke, or that concern.
Through you, Chair Coburn, to Luke. Yeah, we've already put the request into the county. They are gathering the data for us to submit over to us, so that we can start doing our baseline gathering as per our timelines. Like, we're being aggressive here, trying to get some stuff done, especially on the corporate and community side. So we're trying to get all that data. They are still going to provide it to us. So, you know, the request went in, so we're just waiting for it to be returned to us shortly.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Does that address your question?
Yeah, thanks very much, Steve. Yeah.
Okay. And Sue, I think you were next, right?
Yeah, just a comment. I think when I say to get everybody on the same page, we can show leadership and keep moving with our program, and that will help draw the others along. I think, and maybe I'm thinking on a county point of view here, I'd hate to see some of the lower tiers doing a huge amount and some not doing anything at all. I think we all need to be doing something. And if we can show kind of a leadership and help bring the other ones forward that maybe don't have the resources that, say, we have, or that other municipalities have, that eventually we're all working together to arrive at a climate change plan that's for the full county. And so I don't see us stopping what we're doing. I think we need to keep moving forward. So,
right.
Thank you.
Agreed. And so the county does have a plan, right? And so now it's incumbent upon us to have a solid plan for our municipality, and that's how we move our agenda forward. Any other questions regarding that community action or climate action community of practice? John?
Thank you, Chair Colburn. Just one quick question for Luke. The current county climate action plan is a mitigation plan, but it says right in there that they intended to work forward with the lower tiers and develop an adaptation plan. And I wonder if there was any discussion of that at the meeting. So we talk about climate action, and we talk about those twin aspects of it. And the county's current plan says they're going to move ahead with adaptation. Was there any discussion of that?
Sorry, you said Luke, but I think you probably meant Trevor. Did you, John? To respond?
I meant Trevor.
Trevor,
I do that all the time.
No problem.
So to the member, I think we're actually being quite ambitious by doing both mitigation and adaptation. So as you stated, it is within the county's plan, their draft plan, to do an adaptation plan after. And to my knowledge, they have risk assessment data from, I believe, Climate Risk Institute or another organization in which they could build an adaptation plan. And that's to my knowledge. And I did read over the RFP from West Gray, and they are doing a mitigation plan. And as I guess you guys are aware, that Owen Sound did do an adaptation plan. So there are some adaptation plans out there, but for the most part, we're kind of ahead of the curve in that aspect. And by doing both.
Okay, thank you. And Anne, I think you are next.
Just a quick question, Trevor. My understanding in conversations with Linda, and I think her presentation to the Gray County Climate Action Network, that Linda had talked about the Gray County plan looking at having it become more ambitious than what it actually was in the document. Was that addressed at all?
From to the chair, to the members. So they did bring, they did have some senior management representation. I personally don't know what the internal structure within Gray County is and what they would require to be able to do that. I do know that for the most part, they have to go back to stakeholder consultation, especially with agriculture communities. And there are other stakeholders as well that they have to re-engage. And then once they've done that, I think they will be able to either keep to the current targets or set new targets.
Okay, and sorry, Anne, is that okay?
Just thank you.
And Sue?
Just looking on the county's website for the climate action plan, there are 3 public engagement sessions that you can register for. One is Tuesday, October 26th from 7 to 8:30, Wednesday, October 27th from 1 to 2:30, and Thursday, October 28th from 5:30 to 7. So if anybody wanted to get in on those ones, it's just listing, give some things about what the summary presentation is and some questions for people to answer. So, and they're accepting comments until November 5th. I can copy this link and email it out to everyone if you would like.
That would be great. Thank you,
Okay.
Sue, and thanks for bringing that to our attention. I'm sure
Yes.
some people will want to tune into that.
Okay.
Okay, I did see someone else's hand up and now I've forgotten who it was. No? No, okay. Maybe we'll move on with Trevor, the Aimo Risk Management Symposium.
Yes, Chairperson. So I'd like to thank the township for allowing me to attend. It was a very informative session. They will be sending out, I believe, video links, and once those come out, I can share them with the committee. So the keynote was by Dr. Blair Felmate. I've listened to him speak twice, I believe, in the last month, and then I am aware that the committee members are bringing him up to Georgian Bluffs to speak again. So very informative person to talk to about climate change. So the living on the, I also attended the Living on the Edge workshop, which largely focused on the legal exposure and liability of shoreline erosion. So when we're talking about climate change, we're not necessarily talking about in 2021 or 2022, but let's say 5 years from now. So in what municipalities' responsibilities are from exposure and legality wise. And I mean, this is in all aspects from drainage to stormwater to, you know, even winter operations. You know, what does the municipality have to do in terms of making sure everything's safe and people's livelihoods are, you know, protected. And so this was mostly focusing on that shoreline erosion, and they talked largely about Hurricane Hazel and what the lawsuits were brought up in terms of Chatham and Kent and the other municipalities that were largely affected by Hurricane Hazel. And so that was a lot to think about. And I think that was very informative. And I'm just preparing my notes in a small, I guess, memo report, and that will go to Steve on that event. And just so he can look at it in terms of when he's looking at shoreline.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. I recently circulated a link to an article. The UK has done a study on flooding and, you know, the risk to people's lives and how we ought to be thinking about flooding as a crisis kind of mode. And yeah, so that's really timely information, and it's something we have to start doing something about now, I think, for sure. Any questions about that summary from the symposium? Thanks, Trevor. We'll look to getting some of those links and a summary on that. And then Open North, the free advisory service. Where are we at that?
So to the chairperson, I did put out in the last meeting that committee members were able to submit to me or meet with me in terms of if they had any stakeholders that they believe that I should be considering for the strategy, not to go out and talk to right now, but to put into the strategy. And that could be homeowners associations, cottage associations, it could be organizations at Cobble Beach, it could be any organization within the community. It's very easy for me to talk to staff at other government agencies, but it's not as easy to talk to members at the community level. To kind of solidify that as well, I've joined Grey Bruce Community Foundation, where I'll be sitting on their vital signs report committee, and that will give me exposure to, for example, United Way and other organizations like that, to be able to just not necessarily talk about climate change, but just to meet and introduce myself. And I'm looking forward to that. But I can give you a list of the stakeholders that I've preliminarily talked back to me as to who else should be on that list for my meeting with the advisor on the 18th. So I'll just skim over that list right now. So obviously, internally, the Township of Georgian Bluffs, the Climate Action Committee of Council, Grey County Municipal Climate Action Community of Practice. We also have Niagara Escarpment Commission, Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Ministry of the Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry, SON, Grey Cobbles Conservation Authority, Grey Bruce Public Health, and Community Foundation Grey Bruce. So these are folks that I have talked to in a preliminary basis, not necessarily about the climate action plan, but just to introduce myself as a member of the township.
So, okay, so thanks, Trevor. Were you looking to add to that list? Most of the ones or maybe all of the ones you've listed are government organizations. Are you looking for more informal groups as well? Like, for example, the Island View Ratepayers Association. There's a new community association in Sitacrity, and staff have the link for that. There's also more of a social, but sort of a newly organized group at Cobble Beach. And I believe that individual contact person's name is Leighton Reed. I'm thinking Georgian Bluffs Cat and Cat Grey Bruce. And I imagine there are some reps in the farming community that live within our borders as well. I'm trying to think, is Thorsten on that is he represented on that farm or agricultural organization? Does anyone know? Anne, I'll turn it over to you. Oh, you're just on mute.
I think Thorsten maybe, but I can also check with Kathy Hurd, who is part or has been part of the farming organizations, and I think is very aware of kind of who's who in that group. I'm also thinking of groups like the Kimball Women's Institute. They have been in this community forever and a day. It's the oldest women's institute in the country. And I think that would be a good group to talk to, as well as the Lions Club. I'm not sure whether they're actually meeting because of COVID. The church community, I think, that's centered around some of the churches, would be a good way to kind of connect with kind of the non-government organized folks. Just to mention, Kathy, there is not a GB CAT anymore, but there is a GB CAN, which is the Climate Action Network, which brings all of the climate action teams from the whole area together in a networking activity. So that, certainly if you're wanting to get a bit of an overview of the region, that would be a group to connect with, but it's not specifically Georgian Bluffs.
Gotcha. I'd forgotten that there was some amalgamation going on there. Yeah, and even groups like Trevor, the Bruce Trail Conservancy, they have a lot at stake in terms of, climate. I don't know, do we even, recommend that you touch base with organized recreational communities like the Snowmobile Club or the ATV Club? I'm not entirely sure what best practice is here in terms of stakeholders. So I think you're next, Sue, and then we'll go to Steve.
Thank you. The only one I think of is Eat Local Grey Bruce with that organization. And Thorsten Arnold, I think, has been involved with that one. So that's what prompted that one. Plus the Bruce Trail Conservancy. NEC, be any feedback we could get from them.
For sure. And Steve, thanks, Sue. Those are all good suggestions.
Through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee, if you guys can generate a list of contact information and send it to myself and Trevor, that would help us out, because we're trying to gather all this data. It's just kind of hard to write down and try to figure out who we're talking to. If you know their emails or phone numbers, it would be nice if you guys can provide us a list that way, and then maybe an overall list, just so we all have the same information, so we're not kind of crossing paths of, I get one contact from this person and one that way. So just makes it a little bit easier for everybody to see what's going on.
Thanks, Steve. That's a good suggestion. So forward those to you and Trevor. Is that proper? Okay. And Anne?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, actually, Steve, I think that's a really good idea. And we've been trying to accumulate that list into one file for the promoting of events that Georgian Bluff CAT does. So we've actually got a good start that we could actually send it to you probably in just one file instead of a whole lot of emails, which might be easier to deal with.
Yeah, well, that would be great. And then maybe we can have that list come back to us again, just to make sure we haven't omitted anybody or any group that would be important. Does that sound okay with you, Trevor, Steve? Okay, perfect. Okay, anything more on Open North, Trevor?
No, that's great. So the next advisory is on the 18th. If you're interested, they have a learning management system. If any members want to become part of the learning management system, it's just a bunch of modules that they can put you into, and then you have the option of working through the modules. But it's completely optional. I work through the modules because I want to, like I said, show that professionalism and that I really engage with this advisory service. And so I've been working through the modules through their learning management system.
Okay, thank you. Down to public question period. Carly, were there any questions submitted? I'm assuming
there were no questions for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully we'll see some questions come through down the road as this gains a little more traction and more visibility. So unfinished business, the committee work plan, and I will turn this over to Luke.
Sure. Well, and actually, I would like to turn it over to Steve and Trevor. So where we left this and in August, September is to, at least that was our recollection, or my recollection, is that we would get the work plan, the overall work plan that Steve sent, and then we would then convert that into the work plan, the committee's work plan, so that we have a bit of a strategy. So, and I think we'll come to the work plan later, but the question is a little bit like who's waiting for whom, because we were in the assumption that Trevor, that Steve and Trevor, after developing the work plan and the milestones, that we then have a plan that is more of a strategy. So, and I see your plan, Steve, in terms of the milestone. But what we really need, I think, at this point, is a strategy how to get to these milestones, and to what extent do we actually then put that into the work plan that applies to this committee, so that we can also then track progress and that we can better support staff in terms of getting our climate action plan up and going. So yeah, I think so the question is a little bit, what do we do with the work plan? We kind of, we need to decide who is taking the next step. And we are, of course, very impatient. We'd love to see this thing going sooner than later. We know that the clock is ticking. So we are quite ambitious in our aspirations, but we need to, I think, now get down to a real work plan that is actually doable. And the one that we have come up with is to date, the current version, the old version, the August version, is still largely based on the different FCM programs, but we need to put some dates behind it, put it in the right order, put it in the right priority, and then really make it work like a work plan, which it hasn't. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
Right. Thank you, Luke. And I think that you have articulated some of the confusion for me. So we have this committee work plan, and we have access, Steve, thank you, to the staff work plan, which there's, and then I envision our actual municipal climate action plan. And if it was a Venn diagram, we could see where all three of those circles intersect. But right now, I don't see it. I see it as, I think Anne calls it melding together under 11.1.3. And I think we're sort of shifting into that conversation here. But that's, I guess, my question. How are these work plans fitting together, and where are we going with an actual climate action plan? So maybe turning it over to Steve and Trevor now. Steve, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee here. We did send out the internal work plan of what staff are working on, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. We do have metrics behind it so that we have targets, goal lines of where we need to get stuff done. We did go through the BARC and the PCP framework, kind of figuring out our next steps and how we can achieve these milestones that the Climate Action Committee is trying to do. I did look at your climate action work plan, and a lot of the stuff that you guys do have there, I've incorporated into some of my programs here, because a lot of it kind of relates to where you're kind of going, especially when you're doing tenders and RFPs. Yes, I say we're currently on there, but then the comment section, I'll be listing, okay, it's currently on the website for bids. This is the next step. So I kind of was trying to make it not as big, because if you start making these plans bigger and bigger, you're going to have like 900 tasks associated to everything there. So in the comments, I usually put in what we're working on, where the status is, kind of give you guys an update of where we're at. The other thing too is the color code system tells you where we're kind of slacking off, where we need a little bit more help with, stuff like that too, like stuff that's on track. Having a climate lens approach on some of our projects that we're doing in operations, and also overall the whole organization, having Trevor review some stuff from an environmental or climate control portion, just to kind of give us that understanding of what we should be looking at when we're doing our reports to council and this committee and all these other committees that we're part of. And then also we kind of were trying to figure out, okay, with the programs and stuff, was how do we make these easy baseline gathering data processes for us? So I know in Article 2 and Article 3, I kind of broke them down a little bit more into corporate and community, because you want to try to get the corporate data fast as you can, because you're going to have that information at your fingertips at the office going through it. Then you can have your community data going through that portion too. Then try to set your targets. and then kind of work your process that way. And then that's why I kind of had them the way that laid out. But those targets, we can change them to move them up to be more aggressive, or we find that we're kind of, oh, we got more data coming in, but it's kind of tacking, or we're waiting for others. It's just stuff like that is what this plan is all about. The other thing too is like our baseline inventories. Where are we getting them from? Who's gathering what data? Where is it coming from? Stuff like that. So it was just kind of breaking down how we're kind of showing you what internal staff are doing quickly to kind of give it an understanding of what's going on. So then at least okay, these are being done by Trevor and Steve, the operations team. This is what they're doing. They're looking at your plan, trying to bring them. But at the end of the day, is what our goal is. You're going to have your climate action plan here. Then it's going to also kind of do that pyramid grid down, right? So you'll have the internal work plan, then the climate action work plan, your strategic plan, and then you'll have there's another work plan out if you decide to do another one. So everything will point up at your climate action plan at the end of this all. But this was kind of more of where we're going, trying to keep you guys informed of what staff are doing, just to kind of, keep everybody understanding of what we're trying to achieve to move you guys forward with getting your climate action plans in place so that we can get into the review stage and all this other stuff.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I like the setup of the internal work plan. I love that you've got target dates and, the percentage of completion and the color coding. I think that's easy to follow, and I appreciate that format. Any questions or comments about the internal work plan and how that fits with the overall plan? Danuta?
Sorry, I've just unmuted myself. Thank you, Chair Coburn. I'm interested in asking Trevor and Steve, or either one would like to speak to that, how they view the plan that we put together with the committee prior to Trevor's being taken on by the municipality as being something that is useful to you in guiding your operations.
Okay, thanks. Danuta, you froze for a second there. I wasn't sure if you were finished your question or not. So that's okay. Thank you. So Steve or Trevor? Steve?
Through you, Chair Coburn, to committee. We take all our plans when we're generating our master operations plan. So this is just like I know the climate action, this plan's part of my bigger plan for all of operations. That one there has over 700 tasks on it. So that's kind of trying to piece everybody to make sure that everybody's kind of doing what they need to do to keep the operations going. But your work plan that you guys have created, the committee's work plan here, a lot of this information I have taken here, but I've condensed it down to one line for me, because then I understand what it is. If you guys want to see it broken down more, consult with RFP, do this, do that. We can start doing that if you guys want for the internal work plan to make it easier to see what tasks are being done before we hit the overall goal. But it's just for where we sit, I'm just trying to keep them down to one line and then add the column, in the comments. Here's what we're doing. But your guys' work plan was taken in consideration when we did this overall arching review on what's going on with the whole township here when we created this internal work plan, so that it makes our because when we do a review every week with all my operations team, we go through this work plan all together as a group to see who else can help out and try to, allocate resources to assist as well.
Thank you.
Okay, that answers your question, Danuta.
Yeah.
Okay, and John?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Steve, for that updated information. So I think I now have a better idea that what this spreadsheet is that we got was an overview for us. What I would like to have is more of a background to some of the information in the spreadsheet, because I was having trouble interpreting some of it. I didn't exactly know how the colors related to the percentages, and I couldn't link the small, medium, large task to the colors. And so for me to use this spreadsheet more comprehensively, I would like more information that sort of would help me first interpret what's here, and if you were to provide more detail, that I think that would help me. I'm someone that would go through that kind of detail so that I could have a better way of interpreting the spreadsheet.
Is that helpful, Steve, or is that doable?
Through you, Chair Coburn, to committee, yes, I can provide a key code of why every item is on that list of what the codes mean, but I also can go into detail as well. So thank you for the feedback. We will take that into consideration and get that out to the team.
And it's possible then for very specific questions, I could just send you an email and we could just get that sorted out rather than waiting for a monthly meeting? Okay.
That is correct. That's the thing is, like, if you send it to myself, make sure you also CC Trevor as well, so that we do have that information going back and forth. But also I would recommend CCing the group as well, so that everybody's getting the same information, so that you have communication together, so that it's not just being siloed by one individual, just so everybody in the whole committee sees what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I wonder if I could ask committee members to mute themselves. Just I'm hearing a lot of background noise unless you're speaking, if that's possible.
So Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, John. Oh, you're muted, John.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just following up from what Steve said and asking you, the chair, to remind me, do we have an established communications protocol then? So I would email Steve, CC everybody on the committee, including Trevor. Like, is that as simple as that? Is that okay?
In my opinion, it is. I don't think it needs to be more formal than that. I know Brittany was going to go over some of those protocols for this committee, but since she's away, I think she'll catch us up on that next time. But for now, I think that's fine as long as it's okay with you, Steve. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
And Luke, I see your hand up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to not to belabor the point, but I just want to go back to the question about work plan, because the question is a little bit like, you know, is the tail wagging a dog type of thing. So we came up with a work plan that was basically fairly abstract, and we looked at the FCM document, and so that is now, and I appreciate, Steve, that you have taken it into your spreadsheet, but now what we wanted to have tested by yourself and Trevor is now kind of ending up as a one-line item in a spreadsheet that has milestones. And I think what we're really hoping for is, what's the plan? What is the strategy, right? How do we go? We have these milestones and much appreciated, but how do we get to these milestones? And it goes, I think, a little bit bigger, back to the bigger question is that for us to fulfill our advisory role, we need to have something to advise on, and it, you know, it's something that has a little bit more flesh on the bone, would allow us to better see where we can support you, and how we can actually get this plan out of the box. So yeah, I still think it would be useful to, and it doesn't need to be whether it's our committee plan or your plan, but it would be very helpful to see a plan. And more than, because now it's a little bit, and really don't take, but it's a little bit like, okay, we put a lot of, we know you're all capable staff, but it's a little bit like, okay, let's leave it to us, and then we'll deliver in February 22. We have the corporate GAG inventory, and then 6 months later we have the community one, and we love to do more, but you know, it's if we don't have anything to hang our hat on, then it becomes difficult to kind of fulfill our role. So that's, I think, where we want to see. I still think it would be worthwhile to use the work plan, whoever's work plan it is, but to have at least something that says, okay, we have step A to B to C to D, because these things don't happen overnight. And anyway, that's I think for us, the need for a work plan still stands, and it would be really good to see, and also to push back, because again, you know, it's much appreciated you integrate it, but maybe you say, you know, it's just not realistic, and we need to sequence things differently, and we have to prioritize, and there are some other municipal priorities that just don't make some things. I mean, it needs to be really kind of something that fits your reality and that still gets us to that climate action plan.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. I would echo those sentiments too. We have more specific tasks on this work plan that's been provided that have to do with operations, and a lot of them are things we're doing anyway, right? Like a salt treatment plan and you know, roads work and so on. The Trails Master Plan, and then when we get to the milestones on this plan from PCP, then it seems very, you know, the steps or the objectives within each of the milestones seem to be missing. So I guess we're looking for more specifics there. So for example, we have the corporate GHG inventory scheduled to be done in February. So as Luke says, like, what is the plan in getting us there? And also with the community inventory that's to be done in August. So I guess I agree with Luke. It sort of feels like we have lots of tasks listed, but again, we're already kind of doing those anyway as a corporation or as a municipality. I don't know how, maybe I'll turn it over to you, Anne. You might be able to build on that a little bit.
They'd almost taken the words out of my mouth, and that is what I think I see in the climate action part of the work plan, which is an incredibly big plan. There's a lot of work, but the climate action plan, to me, what I see is goals or objectives. I don't see steps to get there. And that's kind of, I think, where we're for us, it's a missing piece. That we can't kind of, how do I say this? In some ways, I think that this committee can be some of your best advocates around developing climate action for Georgian Bluffs. If we don't kind of know kind of what the process is, what the steps is, we're left a little bit with our hands tied in being able to support the process for Georgian Bluffs. So I think it's important for us to be aware of the steps. I don't think we are saying we want to micromanage you. But I think, and we shouldn't be, and we know that, but I think to have a bit better understanding of, yep, we know what milestone 1 is, and that's great. How are you going to get there? I do have a little bit of a concern about milestone 1 because one of the actions that this committee took in December of 2020 is to have a motion go to council, which was approved in, I think it was December 16th, approving funding for the emissions audit and inventory for the 2021 budget. And I'm seeing the dates are taking us out of 2021. So I worry a little bit about what was recommended to council isn't happening. So I don't know how big a concern that is.
So I'm going to ask Steve to respond to that specifically regarding that motion. And thanks for reminding us that that did go back to council for approval. So Steve, do you have an update for us that way?
So through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee here, we are in the process of generating that RFP for it. It is going to still be funded from the 2021 budget, but it will be completed by 2022 next year. So we're still in that process trying to get the RFP going. Once the RFP gets awarded, then work will still be coming out of the 2021 budget. It's just the way the timing of all the projects and RFPs that have gone out. It's just this one kind of, they'll go out in here in the next couple of weeks. Then it'll be produced, and then you guys will get a staff report saying this is who we're going to be working on to get this data coming through. Do you guys agree with hiring this consultant? And then we come back and say, here's the next steps. And then they lay out, here's how they're going to get the data for 2022. And then that process will be done. Then we bring it back to you guys with all the information as required. That's how normally happens with RFPs and stuff like that. Some RFPs do they'll start in the fall, and then they'll continue on into the early spring of next year.
And does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up question there?
Well, I think I do have a follow-up comment, and that is that, you know, I think it would have been really useful for the committee to know, because I know we have tabled a number of times, how is this data going to be collected? And this is actually, I think, the first time we've clearly heard that it's going to be collected externally, not by in-house people, but by external people. And if that was kind of the thinking, I think it would have been really useful for the committee to understand that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Steve, the RFP, is that both for our internal inventory, like our corporate inventory and the community inventory, or are we doing the one in-house and the community one is being tendered out? Is there a distinction there? Steve?
Through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee. So the intention is with the energy audit was we're going to go back out to the tender what we did before in 2019 to get the same company come back to do the audit of the corporate data, and then the community data would be handled by Trevor internally, kind of working on the community portion of it, and then same with also the corporate plan as well. The corporate climate group is the corporate climate action plan as well. The consultant would be hired on to gather the corporate data and then have Trevor work with them, trying to get the community plan at the same time, and then kind of work our way through it so that we can have Trevor focus with the community kind of component there, have the corporate data get going through that, because the consultant would be faster at gathering the data, analyzing it, and providing results for this community so that you guys have baseline data quicker than what would be done internally.
Okay, so forgive me, Steve, but just to distill that down, the RFP will be for someone to do an energy audit and our corporate emissions, whereas Trevor's going to be working on the community GHG emissions inventory.
That's correct, to get the data that way to get us going and move us forward on these milestones.
Okay, so again, I'm sorry if this is going to sound obtuse, but is an energy audit the same as an emissions inventory, or is it just part of the inventory?
It is part of the inventory.
Okay. All right. Anne, I see your hand is up. I'm not sure if that's from before or no. Okay. Any other questions then regarding, I'm going to say regarding that part of the work plan, the emissions inventory. I think, we don't want to sound like we're, harping, but it is the first step in a process that we've committed to. And I know that things move slowly in the world of politics and sometimes, and I know there are competing priorities. So when I saw the targets for those, that very first milestone and the dates, I couldn't help feel a little discouraged, but I do understand why these things take so long. Luke, over to you.
Yeah, it's just to kind of, come full circle and to maybe see to what extent what's the way forward, right? In terms of, I think we would all benefit from having a clearer path towards some of those milestones. Of course, we would like them to be more ambitious, but it is what it is. But at least I think the request is an old one, is to see, can we actually collectively come to a work plan for this committee that leads to a path to development and implementation of the climate action plan?
So a work plan for the committee, Luke, that's different from the one we currently have?
I would say that is more specific. It's a plan behind the milestones, and I think that's probably more what we're looking for. And if that's a work plan for this committee or a work plan for, it's really kind of the plan. It's the plan to get to the plan behind 2.0 and 3.0, to be very specific in the work plan, right? So it's not so much about the corporate activities, but more, how do we get to the climate action plan?
Are there any suggestions along those lines, Steve?
Through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee, we will come back to you guys with more detail on that process, just to show you how we can get to these milestones, but kind of show you every step of the way to get to them. That's no problem here. So we heard that when we were talking with member John here as well, that, you know, a lot more detail in this plan would help out to understand what's missing, what can we do to help out. That's great feedback. So we'll make sure that we get this into you when we bring this back to you guys as well.
Luke, do you feel like that's at least a first step towards that goal, is to get this the work plan back from Steve with more detail, and then move forward to decide what our committee's work plan will look like?
Yeah, no, that's much appreciated. And again, it's not the entire work plan. I think we are particularly interested in point 2, 3, and 4 of the work plan, and actually 5. But that's that's the mandate of this committee was about getting to the development and implementation of a climate action plan. And yeah, we have a sense of urgency. So yeah, that's the background of this. So much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. And Anne, your hand is raised. Go ahead.
I think Danuta had her hand up before.
Oh, I'm sorry, Danuta.
So I will
Go
pass
ahead, Danuta.
Danuta.
Thank you.
That's okay. I've prepared a stupid question. What is the difference, or how does an energy audit transmit or translate into an emissions inventory? Can someone answer that? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if Steve wants to tackle that, or I suspect Luke and John also have probably some comments on that, or Trevor. Goodness, let's go to Trevor.
Through you, Chair, to the member. So using, for example, PCP does allow for us to use the CDM as baseline emission data, as well as to update emission data.
Sorry, Trevor, did you say CDM?
Yes. As long as the CDM is very comprehensive, so it also includes fleet and, for example, streetlights. And that is very easy actually to take that data and turn it into emissions data. And then also any audits that are done energy-wise can also be turned into emissions data as well. So they're completely interchangeable.
Steve?
Trevor, can you tell him what CDM is, please?
Thank you.
Sorry, so under the legislation, municipalities have to report their energy use data to the Department of Energy. I believe it was to municipal relations before, but now it's to the Department of Energy. And this puts the municipalities in compliance. So the municipality has the choice through the system as to what they want to disclose, if it's only municipal buildings or fleet, or for example, streetlights. And so the more comprehensive, the more information you have. And the reasoning behind this is the municipalities start looking at how they're going to manage their assets. It's not specifically tailored for emissions reduction. It's more for a lot of municipalities, their assets were getting a little bit out of control. So by looking at energy use, the municipality is able to set energy targets. And this is not the targets that we're using. We're using emissions targets. So those are entirely different. But we're able to take that work and through the PCP program and extrapolate on that and set baselines and set emissions targets specific to carbon GHGs.
I feel like I might be more confused now than ever. Is it just me? Trevor, what does CDM stand for specifically?
So those are, you guys saw them, I believe Zach presented to you the conservation and demand plans. So there was one done for 2019. It was only done for municipal infrastructure buildings. It wasn't done for fleet or I believe streetlights. But for example, we would use 2019 as a baseline year for our emissions, and then we would do another energy/emissions inventory for 2021. And the county, the data that they have that we've requested, that is 2018 emissions data. So on the community side, when we get the data from the county, our baseline year would be 2018 for the community side. And I know this is very technical, and I don't mean to confuse anybody here. Once we get into assets and energy and emissions, it can get very technical very fast, and we can get bogged down very quickly.
Danuta, just to go back to your question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor and Steve, the municipality is required to do an energy audit. So that's an audit of the energy that our municipality uses, and it has to do with asset management. We had one done. I'm trying to simplify all of this the best I can. We had one done. I believe it was still in draft form. It sounds like we're not accepting that or moving to approve that as a final document. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but rather we're now tendering out to have that process done again. So are you saying that the one that was done previously that I don't believe ever was approved officially by council is now redundant, out of date, unusable? Or why are we tendering for another audit to be done? Is it just out of date? Steve?
Through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee, it's being retendered because it is out of date and it was never really approved by council. So it's something that we will have to get revised and then bring back to council. So it'll come to this committee, explain who we're awarding this project to, and then you guys will say yes or no, then it goes to council for approval. Then a report will come back saying, here's the results. This is what we're going to be bringing forward so that we can get adopted and proceed with our next steps.
Okay. And so that energy audit is just one part of our corporate emissions inventory. We would need more data in order to finalize that part of the inventory. That is my understanding.
That is correct.
Okay. I still don't know what CDM stands for, but I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let it go. Go on to Steve.
Conservation and Demand Management Framework. Thank
you. I thought nurses were the ones that were guilty of using acronyms all the time and people not understanding, but I appreciate that. And your hand is up, and I think you're next, and then we'll go to Luke.
All right, thank you, Chair Kathy. So my comment was, at some point for this committee, sooner than later, I would like us to be talking about the plan, not the committee plan and the internal plan, but that we actually have a plan that moves us forward. And I can respect that staff will need to take that plan and break it down into more steps that the committee doesn't need to worry about. But kind of can we work towards a plan? And that's where kind of the language of melding the plans, I think, comes from, is that I think we're creating more confusion, and kind of a lot of time and energy has been spent on the plan and the plan. So could we work towards, my goal would be a plan. The other question I have, and that's regarding the energy audit, and I understand that a lot of it is based on energy use and emissions. Well, part of, if we're going to be tendering this out, well, part of the work that they do also look at nature-based assets in terms of sequestration and that kind of part of looking at kind of emissions, but emission sequestration.
Steve, I'll turn that question over to you.
Through you, Chair Coburn, I'm going to try to answer as best I can. If I don't, let me know. It might take me 2 stabs here. Yeah, so from what I gather from committee member Anne here is that she would like to see, how do we get to the plan? What the major plan that we're all here for? So with these little plans, we'll get them merged back together, kind of deal with more detail, and then it'll show us how to get to the plan, and then what our framework is to get to that major climate plan, so that everybody knows how we're going to get there. then once we get there, then we'll be able to do it. So if we defer that back to staff, we can have that hopefully in the next, probably give us a month to kind of get those are the details. If it comes quicker, that's great from our point of view, but worst case scenario would be to you guys by the second, not the next meeting coming up, and the next meeting after that.
Okay, and in terms of sequestration, Anne, I wonder if is that more part of the community or the community inventory, or what? Can you just rephrase or repeat that question again?
Well, I know that when you're looking at carbon emissions, you also need to be thinking about how carbon can be sequestered into our wetlands, our woodlands, our grasslands. And I know that Georgian Bluffs has property, it has road allowances, it has parks, green spaces. And my wondering was, will that be taken into account when we're looking at kind of, yes, we're emitting this, yes, we're able to sequester this through our nature-based assets? And maybe that's not part of the inventory, but it was more a question of, is it part of the inventory?
Trevor?
I'm going to go ahead through the chairperson to the member and try to take a stab at this. I sit on a lot of different working groups with FCM and other organizations, and this question comes up all the time. So I believe what Anne is alluding to is, so net zero is not absolute zero. So municipalities are trying to look at how they can trade off emissions with sequestering carbon into their natural, for example, wetlands and forest cover and tree cover. It is not contained within PCP, is under something called greenhouse accounting controls. And there is an option in milestone 3 to incorporate data from sequestration of carbon into wetlands and forest cover. And it's an extra step that municipalities have the option to take. A lot of municipalities are not clear how they're going to take that step. I was on a conversation with Okotoks in Alberta. I know the climate coordinator there, and that's something that she's struggling with. And I know a lot of municipalities are struggling with this. I think in the next year or two, there's going to be a very concrete method of doing this. But at the current stage that I understand it, it's very, municipalities are still trying to wrap their head around it. And that's all the information I have at this point from the working groups that I currently sit on.
Thank you. Over to you, Anne.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for mentioning Okotoks, Alberta, because I understand that they actually did do a nature-based asset inventory as part of the work they did. And I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is that if you don't look at your nature-based assets, then you also don't think so much about how to protect them or how to grow them. And that's part of why I'm bringing it up, because I think the municipality does have an opportunity here to enhance what they already have from a climate perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks, Anne. And Steve, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, through you, Chair Coburn, to the committee here. Staff will look into this a bit more and kind of see what we can incorporate into this. Just with more data being added into it means more milestones kind of going down farther, right? So we got to kind of look at some stuff, but we'll get more information on this kind of question, and we'll come back to the committee here and bring up some more information and see what we can do to move forward.
Thank you. And I think it's an important one too, not only to highlight what we need to protect, but it may also make, not that we should be patting ourselves on the back at all, but it does, in an area like ours, it does point to some nature-based strategies that we already have that we can use as part of our plan going forward to keep reducing some of the greenhouse gas emissions in those ways. So Luke, I'm trying to remember now. Luke, did you have a comment? Were we going to you next?
No, I think I'm all fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Deputy Mayor Sue?
Thank you. And I'm really glad Anne brought this up because the municipality over the years has taken some lands back through tax sale that we've debated on whether to offer them for sale again just because of the future maybe potential difficulties that would come from putting those out for sale because they're not developable, can't be developed as residential lands, even though they were lots of record. So is this a reason or a way to justify not reselling those lands, but using that potential use going forward? So is that something we can look at from here, or are we getting way out of where we should be at with this committee looking at that? I know of some lands within the municipality that we wouldn't want to sell just because of the potential problems that would exist with it. So just questioning.
No, I think that's a great point. Yeah, Steve, do you have a response to that?
We'll defer back to staff to kind of look into it a bit more, and then we'll come back to this committee with a follow-up feedback question.
Yeah, I think it speaks to that whole, we talk about it sort of metaphorically, but looking at our planning, zoning, development through a green lens, through a climate change lens. And, I think our senior planner would be a good one to loop in on these kinds of questions as well. Over to you, Anne.
Sue, I really like your suggestion or your idea there in terms of, and I see it actually as, maybe I'm wrong, but as the function of this committee, that could be a recommendation that the committee take to council at some point. I'm not saying do it today, but I think we have an opportunity here, and I think part of our role as the committee is to be bringing things to council table that we see will move a climate action plan forward. And I think Sue's suggestion of protecting land that is now in the ownership of the council makes a lot of sense.
I agree, for sure. Yeah, thank you. So any other questions or comments in terms of the work plans? And I think we have reassurance from Steve that we'll be moving forward with some more detail under at least a couple of the milestones. Steve, I think you're, if I can summarize, I think you're hearing some concern or worry that if we don't have sort of solid steps in place and objectives, that they may fall by the wayside. And it's a fair enough concern because we've seen this happen in other municipalities. They're gung-ho off the hop. They do the declaration, they set up a committee, and then things do start to fall by the wayside and they get stalled. And it's the momentum that we don't want to lose, because it's really hard to get us started again if we come to a halt. And I take solace in the hiring of Trevor, in that we've made that commitment and we'll be moving those steps along, hopefully in a timely manner. So I think that takes care of items 10.1, and under new business 11.1, the internal work plan. Steps to achieve milestone and time targets. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anne, but I think we've covered that. Under 11.1.2, Steve, is there anything else to report in terms of tenders and proposals? So you've talked about the energy audit RFP to go out shortly. Is there anything else in the works there? Go ahead.
So this Friday, the Corporate Climate Action Plan will be, the tender RFP will be closing on Friday, and a report will be coming back to this committee for your next meeting, which is on October 29th, so that you guys can see what's about, and the RFP will be attached to that staff report. So we'll have more detail on it, and then who's bid on it and what's the next steps and how we're going to get targets and stuff done. So that's coming to you guys on October 29th, just so you are aware.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And it won't be October 29th. We'll be changing that, but that's, yeah, we get what you mean. Thank you, Steve. And I believe we've covered 11.1.3, how we sort of collapse these work plans into the plan, as Anne says, so that's good. And I need to go to the chat function because I'm seeing things popping up. So, I gotta get caught up here. So conservation and demand management framework, thank you. Was it previously called the Energy Conservation and Demand Management Program? Steve says yes. I'll never remember any of that, but I'm gonna pretend that I will. And then John, in spring of 2021, the feds committed $270 million targeting carbon sequestration in agriculture by protecting wetlands and crop soil sequestration. So that's encouraging, and you know, certainly a reminder that we need to be working with the agricultural community as well. Is anyone else seeing this odd, how do you want to join your Teams meeting?
It looks like Anne might have accidentally shared her screen.
Oh, thanks, Carly. Do you know how to unshare that, or can Carly help, or do we just ignore it and forge ahead? And you're just on mute.
I don't even know how I did that. I was trying to find the chat and I obviously clicked on the wrong thing. Okay.
Little arrow, an arrow on the top right hand side of your screen.
It's beside leave.
Beside leave, yeah.
Just to let you know, I'm on a Mac. So sorry.
On a Mac, it's still next to the leave sign.
I don't see leave.
The red button.
Yeah.
The only.
Are we okay to just ignore that, because we only have, I think we're going to go ahead, and if Anne can figure out how to unshare her screen, that would be great. But for the sake of time, I think we'll just be happy with the very small little icon pictures of each of us, or we could, there we go. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, so moving on to 11.2, rescheduling of our October 29th meeting. So we have a conflict there with some meetings of council. And I would propose, if committee is in agreement, that we look to the first week of November instead of October 29th. Does that sound like it might work? I have the November 1st, November 3rd, and November 5th available that week. Steve, how does that look for staff time?
Staff time, we're looking good. November 5th would be the best day for all of us in staff. I know that's a Friday.
We have had these meetings on Friday mornings in the past. I can't remember if that didn't work for a committee member, but why don't we go for, what time in the morning works for staff then, Steve, for the 5th?
For staff, I'd say anything after 9 a.m.
So 10 a.m. on, does 10 a.m. on November 5th, that Friday, work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Carly, does that make sense from your perspective?
I'm just looking at Brittany's calendar. She does have a conflict that morning until 11 a.m.
Okay, can we shift it to 11 then? Does that work for committee? Yep. How about that, Carly? Does that work? 11 o'clock on November 5th?
Sounds great.
Perfect. Thanks for letting us know. Okay, moving on to 11.3. So Anne is bringing forward a proposal for some standing items on these committee for these committee meetings, and they're listed there. So an overview of progress since the last meeting, any diversion from the plan and rationale, any challenges that have been confronted in the results, and what's coming up next. Danuta, I see your hand up. Is that something you want to comment on?
That's my suggestion. I just felt that covered a lot in this meeting, and I'm very grateful for that, because answered questions and things like that, and hopefully met each other on some issues. And I just felt that in order to participate effectively, these are the points that I feel I need as information that comes out when people are doing updates and reports. And so I was wondering if a template was of any help to anyone. I just itemized the things that I feel I need to know in order to participate well in our mandate. So it's there for comment.
Okay, so Danuta, you were cutting in and out a little bit. Your image tends to freeze at points. So are you saying that these 4 points are what's part of your template, or are you talking about something different?
No, these are the 4 things I feel I need to know when I'm looking for information or listening to an update. This is the kind of thing I need to know, and I wondered if it was useful as a template.
Okay, thank you. Steve, do you want to respond?
Through you, Chair Colburn, to the committee. Yeah, when we do our operations update, that'll be the standing item. We will follow this kind of process so that everybody gets the same kind of understanding of the overview of the progress since last time. We'll have a little quick review of that, and then anything that has diverted or how it has changed, why we changed, the reason, rationale, and then we can, any challenges and stuff like that. So this is great. We'll work this into our operational update every time we meet.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments about that recommendation? No? All is good. Thank you, Steve. You are one of the most agreeable individuals I think I've ever met. Thank you. You say no. I know you've told me that before. I haven't seen that other side of you. So thank you for being accommodating. Anne?
This is not related to that item, and I realize I probably should have mentioned this when there was a request for other agenda items, so I don't know whether it's appropriate to bring something up at this point. I think we're close to adjourning.
Yeah, maybe let us know what the topic is, and if we feel that it's a lengthy conversation, we can bump it to the next meeting.
Yes, it could be a lengthy conversation, and I think it would be appropriate for the next meeting, but I know that George and Bluffs is working on the development of its new official plan. And I do wonder about having climate action be a significant part of that official plan, and whether this committee should have some input into it.
That's a fantastic point. Thank you. We did have a brief presentation on that a couple of meetings ago, and I know that climate action is part of that update. And I do know that there's a process for that official plan that involves community input and some public forums. And I don't know if Steve has any dates on that, but we do have sort of a plan over the next little while of how that's going to be done. So can we request that this committee formulate some input into that official plan, Steve?
So for that kind of comment, I am going to defer to the senior planner. I will see if she's available for November 5th to be here to kind of give this group an understanding of what the official plan is and from the climate component. So that would be the best time to bring that up. Perfect.
That would be great if Jen could join us. And thanks for bringing that up, Anne. It is, when I read, maybe Sue has some comments too. Oh, I think Sue just signed out. Shoot. What I did hear from the company, the consulting firm, was that they're looking for lots of input over the next little while, and it seemed like it was going to be an open kind of a process, which was encouraging. So yeah, I think it's more than suitable that our committee prepares something as input into that official plan. So we'll start with having Jen come and maybe speak to that at our next meeting. Okay, so I guess I should ask, is there any notice of motion that anyone wishes to bring forward at this time? I see none at the moment. We have no closed session material. We have decided on the date of our next meeting being November 5th at 11 a.m. And so I will just ask for someone to move that we bring the meeting to a close and adjourn. Thank you, Danuta. All in favor? Thank you, folks. Thank you, staff. And we'll see you next time. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Okay.